Today we celebrate the feast of Saint Vincent de Paul. We probably are all familiar with him serving the poor, so the Saint Vincent de Paul stores and things like that. But he's also very involved with clergy formation. We read that in the collect, the opening prayer this morning. And actually the seminary I went to in Denver was a former Vincentian seminary. So it was ran by the Vincentians, which are part of the community that was formed by St. Vincent de Paul. So an interesting little tidbit about St. Vincent. But he was very concerned about the poor, which makes me ponder the notion the church has upheld for several decades now about this preferential option for the poor, that the poor should be on our forefront of how, when we're thinking of laws and things like that, of how do we minister to them and help them live a good, dignified human life. And I can't necessarily put that teaching in a nutshell, but it has to do with that they should be on the forefront of our mind. How do we help them and whatnot? So that's a great teaching discipline of the church that's upheld today. It's very beautiful. That teaching was also maybe even popularized, but upheld by a notion of, it's called liberal theology. I don't know why I just forgot it. Liberal theology, which is basically just, it's a huge emphasis on the poor, and it gets a little bit off rails in the magisterium in recent years. I've tried to kind of bring it back. Liberal theology gets off the rails because it basically can equate the gospel with eradicating poverty. And that's not necessarily what Jesus came to do. He came to save our souls and lead us to heaven. He did come also to help the poor and told us that whatever we do for the least of our brothers, we do for him. But liberal theology, it just, it equates the gospel with eradicating poverty. And it's not easy to put it in a nutshell anyway, so I'm painting broad strokes here. But it just kind of puts evangelization and service to the poor on equal levels. And that's not quite the gospel. And so the church has tried to rein that in. So I'm just trying to help us kind of, how do we get this right? And I think our first reading, it speaks that God is jealous, right? It says, the first from the prophet Zechariah, it says, the Lord says, I am intensely jealous for Zion. He's jealous. And last week he beat on us for being jealous, and now he's jealous. I don't get it. But the deal is, like, he wants it all. He wants all our attention, all our love, everything. He wants it all. And then from there, he's God. From there, everything else comes, even our service from the poor. So I think maybe, just in our minds, when we're trying to get right this preferential option from the poor and whatnot, I think liberal theology just has it switched. Instead of liberal theology, it needs to be theology liberation, right? That we put God first, and then from that, then we seek to serve and help others. We seek to eradicate sin first, and then eradicate poverty. It's just a whole mixed bag. But I guess we got to get it right. We got to get it right. We got to get our priority straight, which is God. Just one priority, who is God. He's jealous for us. We need to be jealous for him. Nothing gets in the way of our love for him. Not even necessarily the service to our brothers, which in a sense is love for God when we get it right. So, hey, hope I didn't muddy the waters too much. But there is a preferential option for the poor that flows from our preferential option for God.